Sometimes I feel like the luckiest guy alive. I mean, I get to sit here and meet with some of the top artists in the world who are teaching. And today you're going to learn about the versatility of soft pastels, because you can do things with soft pastels to mimic watercolor, to essentially mimic oils. There's a lot of versatility. And we have a great guest today who's going to do that for us, Terrilynn Dubreuil. Did I get the French right?
Yeah, the closest is like Dubreuil, like a boy, but with an R in it. But that's tricky. Terrilynn is fine. Dubreuil. Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this. Tell us what you're going to do today.
Well, we're talking about the versatility of pastels. I've done oil, watercolor, almost any media, photography and things. But pastels, once I started really focusing on about 7 years ago, I realized it's the most versatile of the mediums. It has just almost pure pigment, not quite, but the least amount of binder, holding those sticks together or the pan pastels together enough so you can get it onto a piece of paper on your easel. And because it is so pure, and the basis of, and the pigment is the basis of all of your art medias, whether it's oil, watercolor, whatever. It's what you add into it as a binder that makes the difference. So because pastels are so pure, it gives us that versatility. We can do washes, almost like a watercolor. We can make it blended, so it comes in thin layers. You can even build up with thick impasto using the right paper and the right soft pastels to look like almost like an oil painting, like that impasto on there. That's a thick amount of pigment on your work. And then even marks like drawing. So it's painting, drawing. It's, to me, it's so versatile. I can do almost anything with it. It's exciting.
So Terrilynn, one of the things that I think is, and I've really been giving a lot of thought to this, because I have a lot of people who ask me about, they have this belief that they can't learn to paint or draw. And I believe anybody can learn to paint or draw. And I came to a realization after Pastel Live last year that the pastel is probably one of the best ways for somebody to start painting, because you don't have to learn how to mix oil paint. It's like crayons, only adult crayons. You just pick them up and start doing it. Am I wrong?
No, it is very easy because you don't have to mix like you do with oil. With oil and watercolor, the other media, when you're looking at something and you're doing plein air and painting it, you have to look at it, try to figure out by dissecting what you see, to go to your palette, pull out a right combination of paint to blend it back together to mimic what you've been looking at. With pastels, they come in so many values, so many hues, so many colors, that you have a box full that usually the color is right there. That makes it a little bit easier. It's quick, easy to clean up. You just put the pastel back in the box and you're good to go.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's get to painting. I think we need to show these people all these versatile techniques that you're going to do.
Sounds good.
And if you guys have any questions, make sure you put them in the chat box, okay? All right, well, let's get this show officially started.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rose.
Okay, today our guest is Terrilynn Dubreuil. I got it. Amandine, my producer, says there's a French way to say it. Amandine, what is that way? Are you going to come on and tell us? Dubreuil? Well, no, she came on and then she disappeared.
It's Dubreuil.
Dubreuil. Okay, but Terrilynn says Dubreuil.
Well,
no,
that's kind of anglicizing it, so it's easier for Anglophiles to say it.
Okay.
But Amandine has it right on. And I'm in France. I have no problem. I will tell you that.
Okay. All right. So tell us what you got going on here.
Right here. I am set up on my easel, and this is some UArt sanded paper. There are a great variety of pastel papers. When I first started doing pastels only way back in the university as a sketch medium, I didn't understand it as much as I do now. And all we had was a smooth drawing paper and hard pastels. The fact that we got any sort of decent paintings out of that is pretty phenomenal. Anybody could do it. But nowadays, we have these wonderful sanded papers. You can get kind of smooth sanded paper up to rougher. I have chosen can I say the brand?
Well, you did, so it's okay.
I'm sorry. But
That's
yeah,
right.
this is a 𝗂𝗧𝗃600. It's fairly smooth, but you can still hear that there's a soft sanded surface in that. In hardware store sandpaper, this is about a 1000. So that's the grit. And the grit is how many particles per square inch. And that's what that refers to, or square millimeter. I'm sorry. But today I'm going to do a very simple, this is my sketch. I did this on location. I'd go out plein air a lot. I use my sketchbook tremendously. You can see I make notes in it sometimes. This is a photo of that. I had another little sketch up above. I liked the combination of these trees. So I wanted to play with that because I want to focus on our techniques we're working on today and the approach rather than worrying about the subject matter. So we're going to start with this paper. It just helps us so much. On this or other surfaces, you can also paint on, say, a clear gesso or pumice gel, maybe with a rough brush, so it gives you extra texture underneath. So many things you can do. It's exciting. But we're going to go through how to use pan pastels, which makes it a very thin layer. We're going to do an alcohol wash that treats it almost like watercolor. You can use water, but alcohol dries faster. So when I'm doing a demo, I use 91% isopropyl alcohol. We'll also try a thick impasto, and we'll move on to drawing for some of our finished marks and things. But it's just so versatile, so wonderful. Be careful with the paper you choose, because some papers will not take fluids very well. And those of us that like to experiment and play around with our pastels, that is important. The other thing is, if it does take a fluid, like if I totally mess up on this, I can wash this all off and reuse the paper and it's still good. So if you're a little bit frugal, this is the way to go. I'm going to start with just this. I'm going to move through these aspects that I talked about. I'm going to use a vine charcoal or willow charcoal, just a piece like this. I like to draw tangential lines on the outside of objects, but here I'm going to use it to indicate basically the placement of the tree. And as I'm doing this, I'm also taking this design and pushing it a little bit. I like it. It's balanced well in the division of thirds, which is based on the Greek golden mean. I'm going to have a couple here. I want a nice dynamic diagonal here that's going to indicate my ground. And then I'm going to have trees behind. Now, you can't see much right here right now, but these little tick marks that I've done are helping me compose my painting. So we're going to move right into, I'm going to throw down, let's see, I said first the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pan pastels and the alcohol wash. Let me show you an alcohol wash quickly. So I'm throwing in some branches, and all I'm doing, I'm using the wide side of the pastel here. Instead of using it at the tip like a drawing tool, I'm going to use the wide side, and I can just kind of hold it and drag it, and I get different marks. So I'm thinking tree branches, right? They get heavier as they go down. They reach up to the sky at the top. Trees are
Okay, I have a question. You're using, are you still using charcoal?
No, sir. I switched to, this is, I believe it's a Diane Townsend. It's a dark olive green.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for noticing that. I switched quickly. So thank you for the questions. If you have any questions, I'll tell you, I was a high school teacher for a number of years. And when my classroom got quiet, I got a little nervous, you know, like what's going on back there? So there's my basic sketch. When I set down my pastels, let me tell you a trick of mine is I always have a rag in my other hand. So this dark one's not going to matter so much, but my light ones will. If there's any other color picked up on my stick, I can just give it a quick touch on the rag and it will clean it off before I put it back in my palette. Then when it's in my palette, I try to put it approximately the right place. And my palette is designed by the spectrum and value. And then I don't have to take once a week and clean out my whole pastels. It's a habit that I got into. Yeah.
How did I do so far?
Excellent. That's you, Eric. That's great. I love that you're painting along. Excellent. All right. Now I'm going to do a little alcohol. Well, I want to add some more color. No, I said pan pastel. I got to stay on focus here. So we're going to.
So do you have to do a toast every time you do alcohol? Is that the deal?
Yeah, I think we talked about this before. I have a friend that has used Tito's vodka for their alcohol. But my concern is there might be, even though in dry vodka there's not supposed to be, but there may be some residual sugar. And residual sugar is going to attract mold and mildew, and you don't want that in your painting. These are pan pastels. If you haven't seen them, these are pure pastels, just like your sticks. They come from Pan Pastel Company, or you can get them from other suppliers. And they come with this wonderful little sponges. I use this one. There's one like this. Many different size sponges. I always learned that the larger brush you use when you're painting, the better. Use the biggest brush possible for as long as possible. So I do the same thing when I go with my pan pastels when I'm painting. So I'm just throwing in some color here, a little bit in the background. I'm going to blue it down. What I do is I take the sponge, brush it across the pan pastels here, pick up some pigment, throw it in. I don't throw it. I threw something last time, didn't I, Eric? I think I threw some pastel on in my painting. I think it was snow or something I threw in.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. You know me, I get a little.
So you're not using alcohol yet?
Not yet. I was at the pan pastel first, then we'll do an alcohol wash. Then we'll go into the others. So that's great. We're taking this in steps. I'm starting in the background. So here I'm still just applying some color, almost like any brush. You're just laying it in, and that's fun. I usually try to save one side of this as the light end and the dark, but I put dark on both edges now.
Okay.
So I'm getting some purple in there. I have basically based this painting. I decided to do it on the color scheme of a secondary triadic color scheme. And what that means is you take your secondary colors, which you get by mixing your primaries. So orange, purple, and green are what I'm aiming for here.
But you don't have anything in your sponge, right? It's not wet?
No, it's not wet at all. It's got a little more texture than in many of the makeup sponges. But no, it's dry. And when it gets dirty really bad, I can wash it in the sink with some like Dawn or something and water. Or I can throw it in the laundry when I throw my rags in. That makes sense.
Yep. Okay.
I'm wiping off the sponge.
Well, I don't have the same color pan pastels as you, but I'm trying.
I lucked out, Eric. I won a couple of awards one year, and both times it was pan pastels. So I augmented my collection so quickly. Now you can work with pan pastels all the way up to a finished painting if you want to. But today we're doing a variety. So you could work this, and with smaller and smaller sponges, which they have, you can add more and more detail. I'm going to take now my alcohol in my spray bottle, wet a brush. So we're moving into the alcohol.
So you're wetting the brush, not the.
You can do both.
And you could also use water, right?
You can use water, definitely. The trick with the water.
I don't have alcohol, so I'm using water.
Yeah, it's just going to take longer for it to dry. That's all. Are you getting a storm up there, Eric? You're in the Adirondacks right now, right?
Yeah. No, it's beautiful, sunny.
Yeah. No, we just had a huge. I'm on the coast of Maine, down near Portland, Maine, and big storms coming through right now.
Yeah, well, we had them a couple of days ago.
So see how I can use a brush. I use my brush very loosely, like I do in watercolor or oil, which I still teach both of those. But this looseness is nice. These branches, again, reaching up, every time I touch the painting, I try to do some sort of a mark that is going to assist the final painting. The thing with alcohol here is it also, or the water, it helps set the pigment into the textured paper. You can also, as you mentioned this, Eric, wait, let me get this other tree done. Oh, I did that one. Okay. And these marks that the brush is making, see how it's separating, can be interesting, you know. I used to get nervous the first few times I did alcohol washes because of the rules of submitting to shows. It has to be 80% pastel on the surface. I thought if I paint it in, they're not going to know it's pastel. So way back, that's when I started videoing myself, taking videos of my process so that I could prove that I was actually just using pastels and not something else. But nobody ever called me on it because a lot of people are doing this. So I'm just lightly spraying across the painting to liquidize. Is that a good word? Liquidize the paint. I can come back in, add some interest in texture into it. I need my rag. So I have my rag and my alcohol in my other hand all ready to go.
Our guest today is Terrilynn Dubreuil. And if you were doing, we're showing different variety of techniques you can use with pastel.
Yep.
And this is painting in pastel with alcohol using pan pastel. Yeah, I got to get more colors of pan pastel.
I love them for the underpainting. I mean, you can do a watercolor underpainting, you can do anything, but with a pan pastel, it's all right there, quick and easy. You can actually layer as well. So that's pretty light. You can also
Do you ever just spray the paper?
I did just spray the paper. Maybe you were looking down. I just took it and went quick across this way, spraying back and forth. Often
Okay.
when I'm working with alcohol, I will lay the paper down on a table because I'll show you. And sometimes I want this. I have a painting in France right now where I use this technique. I dribbled it down over. And if you look at this, you can see, I don't want it to go all the way, some of these interesting drips and textures that it's going to put in the background of my painting. And that's a sense of being a little out of my control.
Much like watercolor.
Exactly. This is like what you can actually pick up the paint with the brush as well, right from your pan pastels. And this will dry. This is just alcohol. It's not going to change the characteristic of the paint in the palette. I suggest that people take some time and really experiment with different techniques and applications that you can do, whatever medium you're working in. I just happen to like pastel because it is so versatile in so many ways. Look at this cool texture down here. I want to leave that. I think that's pretty cool. So we've done some spray, we've done pan pastel, we've done kind of an alcohol wash. We're going to go in, I'll show you a little bit of blending as I start layering here. And then we'll get into some thick impasto. I'm going to try to dry this. And then some finishing marks on the paper.
Would you tell everybody what thick impasto means if they don't know?
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, thick impasto is a buildup of your pigment to a thicker layer than just laying flat on the surface. In oil, it's very obvious. You just get a glob of paint on your brush and flip, just slap it onto your painting and leave it. That shows a thick impasto. You can do something very similar with pastels, because again, it's basically the pigment you're putting on, it's what's being held. Now, some people think that you can't put a lot of pastel onto your paper, but this is not true. I have seen such variety of how much pastel is on paintings. You look at some of your pastel artists and it's thick. I mean, if you looked at it sideways, it could be up to like an 1/8 of an inch thick. That's a pretty thick impasto. Yeah. I know I'm using these French, these fancy academic terms, right?
Oh, this is okay. There's people watching that might not know.
No, I know. Thank you for calling on it. So we clarify it for them. All right, I'm checking the back of my finger. I don't use the front because there's oil on the tips of our fingers. Often we touch our face or something else often. This is still quite wet, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of proceed. I'm going to work a little more. Now, I told you this was purple and it looks blue to you right now. I'm sure it does. But these are my back layers. So I'm taking a blue pastel. You can see how wet it is because it's still picking up. See how it's picking up the wetness on my pastel stick?
Yeah.
I would give this normally time to dry, but we need to move ahead. I'm also noticing I like this blue. This one's a little harder. I have a great variety of pastel sticks in my box. Some of the great ways, if you belong to any pastel group or society, oftentimes they will have material swaps, supply swaps, and everybody brings, I don't use this very much. Do you want this? What would you trade me for it? So it becomes a nice barter situation at times. I want a little blue, lighter blue. So when you're going to blend, you lightly skim the surface of the paper. So it's just picking up some of that pastel. I don't want it solid at this point. I want that other color shining through. This is glazing. And you use the glazing terms also in oil paint and watercolor and acrylic. It's just a thin layer. Glaze is a thin, look at the terminology we're learning if you didn't know it before. Glazing is a thin layer of one color or value, mostly color, over the next. So as I'm trying to do so much at once. All right. So see how this pink, this peach pastel is picking up the blue. I have to be careful with that. Just a light swipe on my rag cleans it off. I like to make a little bit of a vignette of my paintings so that the eye continues around. You want to keep the viewer's eye in the painting as much as you can. And that's how we see things. When we see things, we don't see things like a camera. A camera keeps everything equally important and equal contrast. And but with our eyes, if we're looking directly at something, everything around it is out of focus. So this is blending. Make sure your hand's pretty clean. So you wipe it very well. I tend to keep my pinky as my light color. Like if I'm going to blend a light color, that goes with the pinky. My darker colors are with these two fingers, and this is kind of my middle tone. I've worked to get that habit going so I don't, if I pick up, for instance, this blue, I'm not going to do it with my pinky, but if I go to blend some of this blue in, and then I touch it somewhere else, you can't see a lot there, but it's, because I use the alcohol on that, it's going, like if we put that in the sky and I want this bright, that's going to affect the look of the sky. And I don't want that. Okay, so now I'm blending. Again, I'm blending in, it's still damp. My paper is still damp. I would step back and wait for that to dry normally. But blend over. I know there's a couple of artists that you've had on that love blending. They do a lot of their backgrounds is blending. I do that sometimes in my underlayers. But once I get to my top layers, I try to keep that thicker marks, the thicker impasto on top with the others showing through. Let me take this nice orange and I'm going to drag it over the edge of this blue here. And now the nice thing about pastel is you have that dark blue layer showing underneath the skim texture of the orange. That's because of the texture of the paper, and it creates this wonderful simultaneous contrast. Simultaneous contrast is when you take two almost complementary colors and lay them over each other, so the particles behind show through some of the particles in front, and it creates a sparkle in your painting. It's like adding spices to your cooking.
All right, are we having fun yet? All right, I'm going to show you my progress.
All right.
Okay, I don't have the colors you have,
Yep.
but
Oh,
anyway.
beautiful. Look at that. Nice colors, though.
Still a little wet. You can see where it's wet.
I can see where it's wet. Yes, that is true. Can you hear the thunder that's happening here?
Yeah, I hear that thunder. Wow.
Yeah, I told Amandine, I said, I'm doing my best.
Somebody said they use a microfiber cloth, I assume for blending.
I use it to wipe on. This is microfiber. I wouldn't buy more microfiber because I learned since I bought these about what it does to the environment. And I'm pretty environment conscious. You can use cotton rags like a face cloth or anything like that. But I did research and they say, don't throw it away. Just keep using it. It's worse for the environment if you throw it away. All right. Gosh, talking and doing everything all at the same time.
Yeah, it's tough.
You do it a lot. I was talking to Amandine how energetic you are considering all the things you do.
Oh, you don't know half of it.
No, I know. I'm starting to. I'm like, what else does he do? Oh my goodness. All right, I want to finish.
Yeah, I have a whole nother division that doesn't have anything to do with art.
Really? Yep. That's why he's so impressive. Now I'm just glazing with a light purple over that deeper blue. The blue is going to help with my aerial perspective and set the distant trees in the background. Again, aerial perspective is just the idea that between us and something further away, there's more atmosphere. So the light rays, because there's more atmosphere, it's less contrast. It tends to be softer and usually bluer because blue light rays have a sharper wave than the red ones, which go more slowly, and that keeps it stronger and it's able to travel further distances. So see, I might blend a little bit. This is kind of medium. I'm going to blend with my medium finger. Now, you're looking at this orange sky. That is intense, but I know what I'm going to do. I'm thinking ahead. I know I'm going to take some more layers over this, and I'm going to put some impasto over that. But I want to do it in the negative space around the trees. So I'm thinking of kind of finishing the background a little bit, not finishing, but working more on that. This olive green coming down this hill. And it's not a hill. These are all just shape and value and color. If you can't draw trees or you can't draw a face, don't worry about it. Is it squarish in shape? Is it triangular? Draw the different shapes in these sizes that are proportionate to what's around it. And you'll find yourself painting. Most abstract painting is a little bit of, it's just kind of the starting stages of a finished painting. That's what abstract is. They just don't keep moving until it's finer and finer details. I'm still in that purple, that bluish purple family here. Checking out.
So why didn't you wait? Why didn't you put all the background in and then put the trees over them?
I wanted to place the trees for my composition. That's a good question. And they're not finished. I'm about to move into them deeper now. It is a lot like watercolor. You want to think thin to thick, back to front. It's just
We have a question from the lovely Paola who says, how do you store your finished pastel paintings and do you spray them?
That's always a question that comes up. I use Glazing. I can show you toward the end, I think, but Glazing is a paper specifically developed for art. And it tends to be, it's kind of like wax paper, but it's not. It's better, and it slides over the top. Some people do use special plastic sleeves to store them, and then I layer them and I keep them very flat. With the sanded paper, you don't necessarily have to spray. If you have maybe a very thick impasto, you might want to spray it slightly in the lighter areas or in some of the darker areas. But that's something we are always talking about with pastels. But so far, this, if I carry it and take care of it, and then you're going to frame it like you would a watercolor, basically, it's not really going to move. There are paintings, beautiful 6 by 5 foot paintings in the Louvre Museum in Paris that have been hanging there since the 14 or 1600s. There's one of the King's Mistress. I think it was up there in the 1600s. And it is still as vibrant as it was the day the artist created it. And part of the reason is because there's so little binder in a pastel, there's nothing to change it. In oil never actually dries, it just hardens. And as it hardens, you start getting those cracks. That doesn't happen in pastel. But do get it framed properly. There's a couple of very good ways to do that. Every now and then I will use fixative spray, but I only use one because a lot of them will change the color.
Somebody said the other day that they use a fixative once they get to like a stage like this, and then they lay more color on top of it.
That's possible too. Again, we are talking about the versatility of pastel. You could fix it at the beginning if you wanted, just those first layers. You can do it midway. You can do it at the end. And again, but some of the fixatives, if you put it on too thick, it will dampen the paint again, the pastel. And you saw what happened when we made it damp with the alcohol, and the fixative would do the same thing, is it's going to darken it. So you want to keep that in mind if you are going to use some fixative. There are two the one I use is now like $40 a can, but the can lasts me a couple of years. And I don't always spray everything. All right.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm having fun so far.
Good. So we're here now. We've been blending. We've done the alcohol washes. I am heading into, I want to define these trees a little more.
So are you using your olive green?
Nope. Now I'm back into a deep, deep purple.
I remember them.
Deep purple. The deep purple. Yeah, no. Are you a singer dancer too?
You don't want to hear that.
I hear you tried some acrobatics recently.
Yes, I did.
So now I'm just touching. These are just some marks because at this point I'm adding a little dark to define the trees, and I'm trying to work the whole painting at the same time so it stays in keeping with itself. Every mark you make is in relationship to every other mark on the painting. And I have to think ahead here to think, what am I doing next? Where am I going to go? I want to come in behind the trees, and do a lot of negative painting. Now let's see, these upper branches, they were reaching up, and I'm conscious of how the angle of my pastel every time I use it. Do I just hold it and drag it on the length, on the edge, or do I drag it across and make it thicker? Vary your strokes at all times. It just makes it exciting and delicious and fun. step back if you can from your painting every now and then. It's important to assess it from a distance. These are two separated, so I'm going to bring a little dark in here to kind of unite these dark areas. Now you can see when I just touch this to blend it a little bit, watch. Whoop, I just did it before, but a lot of this pastel is falling down at this point. It's not finished. So here I'm not really blending. I'm kind of just tapping it and pushing the pastel into the sand on the paper. Just to kind of hold it there as I come in with some of my other colors. Boy, this one's going to be outrageously brilliant.
Outrageously brilliant.
Outrageously brilliant. I've been working very much recently on gray tones. I did a whole series after my mother passed of her that got a huge response because everybody related to her with her cat and how close they were, and that got an international award. So I've been in like a gray. What is it? What did Picasso have? His gray, his blue period,
his gray period,
rose period. I had my gray period, but it's fun to look at this now because these are secondary triadic colors. The green, the orange, and the purple work really well together and create some exciting layers of color. It's funny, you know this maybe, Eric, but I get talking along and painting at the same time. And I'm like, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah.
I have that problem all the time, not just painting.
You know, I used to think it was becoming an age thing, but I'll tell you what, I taught high school and they do it too. It's not age. It's we have so many things in our head, right? It's so much. I'm just adding a little more dark in the shadows of the branches, checking my time. I got to get moving. All right, we're doing well.
We're doing fine.
Is yours coming along pretty well? I'm going to add a little more blue because the blue is just here and I need to have a little bit of each color to keep the eye moving around the painting. So I'm going to add a little blue down in the shaded area here. I'm just touching at some points. Other areas I'm kind of dragging, indicating some shadows. What if we sprayed right now? I wanna try a little something. Remember I did the dribble spray like the watercolor? I'm gonna dribble a little bit here. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, why not?
I'm afraid to do that.
Yeah, I have a painting on in France right now at an anniversary show for one of the societies there that I did the dribbles in. And it's hard to replicate. If you want to do it again, it's going to be kind of tricky. Also notice, I don't know if you can see in the camera, this is still wet, but the alcohol that I sprayed in between here, it just kind of fell on the paper, is pushing some of the pigment away from itself. So it's creating little interesting dots and texture in there. Yeah,
when I just sprayed, a lot of pastel dust just flew off.
Don't spray too close. How close were you with the sprayer? That's a good point, Eric.
Obviously too close.
And we're talking about fixing. If you're fixing, you want to keep your can about at least a foot to 15 inches away from your painting. You want to keep the painting vertical. You want to start off to the side and sweep across the painting and change your movement. I'll look at the camera. Like if I'm starting off to the side here, across the painting. Don't spray like this. Sweep it across, turn the painting, sweep it across in the other direction. A very light spray will do it. Little dab will do you. And if it's down on the ground or something, when you do that, if the spray can lets out some dribbles, they're going to affect your painting. This way, any dribbles that fall from your like 15 inches away will fall down to the ground. So that's a little spray tip there. So look at all the kind of things we've done. What is this looking like now? It's looking like a pastel painting because we've been talking, we kind of did the watercolor look. We've done some blending. I am going to come in with my finishing marks now. So
Okay.
this is where I start working in my thicker impasto. This is a very soft pastel, and I can just almost push it into the paper. Hold it, drag it, push it. But notice, even as I do that, I keep changing the angle of it. If you do all the marks, I'll do some down here, all the marks in the same direction, all the same size, it's going to be boring, right? You want to keep it energetic and fresh and moving. I'm going to glaze a little over those trees in the distance, just so that maybe there's a fog back there. Smaller marks in one place, bigger marks in another. Little areas where negative space peeks through the tree. Trees are a great subject matter to paint, to practice new techniques, because you're not going to be concerned about, you know, is the nose in the wrong place? Is, you know, the foot on his ear? You know, a tree, you can move it around somewhat and not worry too much about it. I've just moved to a little deeper color in the same family. The orange. I'm having fun. Eric, you having fun?
I'm having fun, but I don't have enough colors.
But you're kind of a newbie in pastels, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a set of pastels that one of our sponsors gave me.
Nice.
But I need more colors, and I need some deeper colors.
Yes. Yeah, there's a convention that we go to every other year that a lot of the manufacturers of pastels come, and we call it the candy store, because you just go in and you can see all of these different pastels and the supplies that go with them in front.
Yeah, that's the IAPS convention. It's a great convention, a great organization.
Yes. All right, playing here. Now I'm just, I was supposed to be doing impasto. Let's go into the grass area, do some thicker impasto. I need a softer stick. I go to my palette, looking for a nice soft, oh, that one looks pretty good. Kind of green. Why are my trees purple?
So you're looking for, you said a softer stick. Aren't they all about the same, or you mean softer color?
Nope, softer in how, oh, that's a good question. It's how hard they are. This stick is quite hard. I'm going to try to use the same pressure over here. I think you can see at the bottom. So there's a hard stick, right? Which is pretty good. And I did a certain pressure on that. This one, and you get used, you can almost feel it when you're touching it. This one's a little softer, and it's going to leave more pigment when I use it. It's hard to see where you are, but then there's like this one is very soft. Look, if I just pick it up, look how it's coming off on my fingers.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very soft and just the same pressure. And there's a lot more pigment on that pressure, on that paper, as opposed to this one at the same pressure. You can see a lot of the paper showing through. And you become accustomed to it. Your pastels are like your friends. You know, you get to know them as you're working with them.
I like that, because I don't have any friends.
I bet you don't. Oh, Eric. So I'm just.
Oh, Eric.
Oh, Eric. I know. Oh, Eric. So that's fairly thick. And with this stick, I can really add some impasto. Wait until I can just like push it in there.
Oh, that's
Thick,
brilliant. That's
rich,
bright.
Right across, catching that light as it comes in behind those trees. A little bit here. And you step back and you can see it a little more objectively. I want that softer, heading off to the distance. See, I did a little blending there. I'm not blending some of these others. But you can layer. Like if I didn't have this color stick in this area, it doesn't matter. The layering will create the colors you need. Again, that great versatility. All right, now I'm going to start kind of.
So I'm using a 400. It doesn't feel like it's holding the thickness as well.
Your 400, and
Yeah.
you must have really soft pastel.
I do.
No, the 400 should hold more. Actually,
Oh, will it? Okay.
it's a rougher grit. You can skim across the top better, because think of it, it's like the particles on this paper are a little bit, they're smaller than the ones on yours. So you're going to get more texture, and it's not necessarily going to, you're going to have to push it into the paper a little bit more. You know, here, bum, just drag. Look, good pressure on that really strong mark.
Okay.
Now, because I'm demoing, this is not going to necessarily come out as an excellent painting, because I probably wouldn't have done that mark in that painting there. I'm just adding in some more shadow into these trees. Step back, take a look, try to plan some of my finishing marks. Nice bold stroke right across. Watch it with this purple as I layer some of this green over it. It will soften and neutralize it, because it's one of the split complements of it. I talk split complements, that's on the color wheel. That's a whole aspect of color theory. But play. Don't worry too much about all this, academic terms and stuff. You just play with it and you're going to find it. I have a friend, a great friend, who's a wonderful artist, and she started out just playing on her own and just now does incredible, beautiful, beautiful paintings, because she just had fun. I'm just tying together. It's all about having fun, isn't it? I'm just dribbling in some paper, some paint, some blue here. And now if you want to do the sketching, the marks of the sketching, I wanted to put this color in. Where can I put this color? I don't think I can. I'll put it behind this tree. Like it's done. This is one of the fluorescents by, can I say the brand? It's Diane Townsend. Yeah. Very soft, very crumbly. Let's do some sketching. Now I'm up on the tip of the pastel instead of the side, and I can make some very interesting marks that just add interest into the painting. Are there any other questions? Are people asking questions? Because
I don't know. I'm too busy. I'm not looking. I got to wipe my hands up. Okay, let's see here. I'm not doing my job today. I am so sorry. Right.
You're having too much fun.
I do have fun.
Yeah, I did.
What is your view of pastel pencils?
I do have some pastel pencils. They're great for details. I tend to be a little looser in my paintings, more kind of impressionistic or expressionistic. But they definitely have a place. I, again, know people who just do amazing, amazing work with their pastel pencils. One thing I find very tricky.
Too much pressure on it. I just crushed one of my pastels.
That's a little too much pressure, yeah. But you learn. Hey, but you don't have to throw that away. You can reconstitute that. I have a little trough down at the bottom where I save my pastel dust as it falls off initially. And I can pour that into a little jar later on, just add a little water and maybe some alcohol so it dries faster, and make a new pastel stick. So you don't waste. You don't waste the paper. You can wash this off and do another painting on the same paper. You know, like we did the alcohol washes early on. You would just do that with the whole paper. And then you have a nice toned paper.
Okay, then.
So very little waste in pastel. Yeah, you think it's expensive because art supplies are always pretty expensive. But a lot of this you can reuse if you want. Let's put a couple of trees back here. I am just dragging on the sharp edge of this pastel. I am just Can you see that paper? Yeah. I'm just dragging it along like that so it creates a nice little line in the distance to indicate some other trees. I'm going to step back. All right. Now I'm making some interesting marks. Still kind of follows the shape of the tree, but it's more for the creativity's sense, doing these things. That dark green I put there is too strong. I don't like that too much.
Well, that's fun. Oh, look at that bright color. How pretty.
Yep. This is one I picked up at the candy store. What I did is any of the colors in my palette that were running low, I took the little chips to the candy store because you get there and you just want to buy everything.
Yeah.
And so I had to control myself somehow.
Well, and you take the labels off so you don't know the numbers.
But you can buy something approximate, you know, and right. But if you hold it side by side, you can figure out which ones they are. I'm just kind of moving around, looking how the painting's coming together. Not a masterpiece. I don't care. I'm having fun. Are there any other questions about? You can always email me too, or from my website.
What kind of alcohol do you spray? Is it
isopropyl alcohol?
isopropyl? Okay.
Yeah. And I buy the 91%. That 70% is fine too. They're all fine. I do that.
91%. I didn't know you could get different percentages.
Yes. You know, the more alcohol's in it, the faster it dries.
What is your favorite darkest dark? Do you have one?
I like that. I know everybody's like the Terrilynn eggplant. No, for me, this is my eggplant. For me, it's this Diane Townsend dark olive green. Is this the one? No, this isn't the one. Here it is. Here it is. Look at that.
Wow. I never heard of Diane Townsend.
See, this is why you do this, so you learn stuff.
That's right. It's not the only reason I do it.
You like hanging out with us, you know that.
That's right. Can I practice on 1000 grit sandpaper? And if it turns out nice, that 1000 grit sandpaper art piece will be saleable?
It is not archival, which you need to, you know, the purchaser needs to know that. And yes, you can use it. With my people who have never tried pastel but don't want to make much investment, I have used hardware store, wet, dry sandpaper, 1000 grit.
Okay.
And it gives them a really good sense of the feel of pastel and how it works without spending a lot of money. And then I buy a set of like Mungyo pastels. Those are Korean that are less expensive than this, because a lot of these pastels, you know, what, $5 or $6 a stick, sometimes even more. You get into Sennelier or Rocher, and all of a sudden you're at $10, $12 a stick. They do last a long time, but beginners are a little reluctant to put that much money in initially. So by starting with the same paper and a cheaper set of pastels, then they can build from there. It's a good way to start. Do be aware, as I said, it's not archival, but I figure if something's going to last about 50 years and somebody bought it for $200, you know, they got their money's worth. At $200, you go out to eat twice for dinner and boom. So.
Sometimes not twice.
Right.
Depends on how many bottles of wine you have.
Oh, well, that's it. There's one dinner out. And if that painting lasts them 50 years, they've gotten their money's worth, I think. It's funny because I was at the Farnsworth Museum in Maine a while back. And they have,
nice.
What?
Nice. What a nice museum.
Oh, it's a beautiful museum. And they have a great deal of the Wyeth collections there. And there's a couple paintings by Jamie Wyeth. And it's on, I looked at it, I'm like, that's cardboard. Is there archival cardboard? I didn't know, you know, so I went and I asked the curator and she sent me to the museum conservator, and she says, no, yeah, it's cardboard. I said, how do you preserve that? How do you keep it from deteriorating? And she said, we just do everything we can. So.
Well, I have paintings that were done in pre-Soviet era Russia, or in Soviet era Russia. They didn't have any materials, so a lot of them are done in cardboard.
Yeah.
What about construction paper? Andreas is asking.
Construction paper is going to fade quickly. Take a piece of construction paper, put an opaque piece of paper over it, stick it in the window for about a week, and you'll see how much it fades. So yeah, you can use it, but the underlying paper is going to fade. I think, here's the thing, I did a study that Degas used to use a chartreuse paper under some of his pastels. And they've done chemical studies, and under, where it's under the frame and stuff, those edges will show the colors of paper that he used. But now we just see it on a very nice neutral background. Yeah. And you just think about a Degas, and on a brilliant colored paper like that, what did that look like?
Andrea is asking, I have my dad's pastels from World War II. Are they still usable?
No, send them to me.
Yes. No, they're not usable. Send them to me.
Definitely. Actually, they could be a very, very high quality. They don't go bad. It's just basically pigment. There's nothing in there that's going to go bad. I had some of my grandmother's watercolors. They had dried in the tube. I had to slice open the tubes and dig the watercolor out, and then I reconstituted it in the well with water, and it came out. So yeah, those older ones, but really, if you don't want them, email me, I'll get them.
Well, Terrilynn, we have come to an end.
Thank you so much.
What a beautiful painting you did. How long did it take you to develop this style, this approach? Lifetime, I guess.
Well, I've been focusing on pastels for maybe 7 years now.
Okay.
But if you've painted in any other medium, that's going to play into your experience. And
Paola asks, how do you wash a pastel painting with thick impasto to start over? Do you brush it with alcohol?
Yes. No, at first, what you do, if you have a thick impasto, like this is very thick, I would take a bristle brush or something, take it outside, because you don't want to breathe in too much of the dust, and brush off as much as you can to save it. You just take I'll do some here. I'll just take this brush and push down. See the pastel falling down below?
Yeah.
Okay, so that will take it off. And then when most of it's off, then you can spray it with alcohol or water, but keep it taped down around the edges, because when it's wet, it's going to buckle a little bit like watercolor paper, but by taping it down, it'll hold it flat and dry flatter.
Okay, why don't you come back on camera real quickly so we can see you. I will try to show what I've done here.
I've got to.
My colors are not as intense because I don't have the, well, they're not showing up as intense, but anyway, it's there. It's bright and colorful, but it doesn't look that way on camera. Okay, well, we're glad that you're here. Hang on a second. There we go.
Here I am.
All right. Well, thank you, Terrilynn. I appreciate it. And we've put your contact information into the chat, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon, and appreciate you doing this.
Well, thank you. I had a great time.
My hands are clean. See, my hands are clean.
Yeah. Well, I had a barrier cream on my hands, so this will wash right off with that barrier cream.
Okay. So. Terrific. Well, thank you very much. Nice job today. Thanks. Okay. Our guest today is Terrilynn Dubreuil, and we are excited about seeing this. If you get excited about what you saw today, we have a whole 4-day summit online called Pastel Live with some of the world's leading pastel artists. And what's nice about it is everybody's got their own tricks, techniques, approaches, different subjects, so you can learn to paint portraits or landscapes or still life or other things. Everybody's got a little different approach. We've got some of the world's leading artists, including some of the oldest of the old masters, and some who you want to get to see them while you can. That's just saying. So that's in September 20th, 18th through 20th. The Techniques Day, Essential Techniques Day, which is kind of the basics, is on the 17th. So join us for Pastel Live. We'd love to have you. We also have coming up Realism Live. Realism Live is coming in November. This is mostly about oil painting, but we do have pastel, we have watercolor and gouache on there, but it's all forms of realistic painting. And then we have Watercolor Live, and that's coming up in January. And we have some incredible artists who are going to be on this you don't want to miss. And then, of course, Acrylic Live is coming up in March. And then there's Live Live. No, just kidding. Okay, one last thing. My fall retreat, Fall Color Week, is sold out. It's in California this year. We're going to be staying on the California coast in Carmel and Monterey. But we were able to get the facility was able to get us a few more rooms. And if we can get a few more people in, if you want to double up in a room with a roommate, or we still have a couple of private rooms available. But really, I think this week, Friday or Sunday, maybe is the last that we can book it because we have to let them know. So we're either going to let those rooms go or we're going to get you there. And you wouldn't have any fun, I know, because it's no fun to roll out of bed, not have any chores. It's no fun to just paint every day and have somebody take you to the places. Well, you have to have a car, but show up at the places that we show you, and then paint all day. And then we put our paintings out at night so we can all see them. And we sit around and we play, we have music, we do portraits, we do all kinds of things. So it's a lot of fun. It's called fallcolorweek.com. Hey, thanks for being here today. We have a free gift for you. It's what is our free gift today? I think it's it's 45 pastel pointers from the pros. And that's just go to pasteltoday.com/ebook. If you have not yet subscribed to this program, well, there's still time. Just go to YouTube, look up Art School Live, hit the subscribe button, the little bell so you get notified when we go live. And of course, give me a follow, please, at Eric Rhodes, wherever you happen to be. Okay. Thank you for watching today. We're here every weekday at 12 noon. I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air magazines and other things.